Most men struggle with respect in relationships at some point, but some men face a specific pattern. Women don't just disagree with them, they dismiss them. They ignore their boundaries. They make decisions without consulting them. They take advantage of their kindness. And these men wonder why it keeps happening, why they attract the same dynamic, why their patience is seen as weakness instead of strength. Psychology shows this pattern is not about being weak or unmasculine. It comes from specific traits that, while valuable, make you vulnerable to being walked over. Here are 5 unique traits commonly seen in men who get taken advantage of by women. 1. They have extremely high empathy. These men don't just understand emotion, they feel them deeply. When a woman is upset, they immediately want to fix it. When she's struggling, they absorb her stress as their own. Psychologists call this hyperempathy. It's a gift in many contexts, but in relationships, it creates imbalance. Because while they're constantly tuning into her feelings, she may not be tuning into theirs. They give emotional labor freely. They listen without needing to be heard. And over time, this one-sided empathy teaches her that his needs are optional, not because she's cruel, but because he never presents them as important. 2. They avoid conflict at all costs. Most men who get walked over share one behavior. They hate confrontation. They'd rather stay silent than risk an argument. They convince themselves that keeping the peace is more important than being heard. Psychology links this to conflict avoidance. They learned early, often in childhood, that speaking up creates problems, so they developed a pattern of swallowing frustration to maintain harmony. But here's what they don't realize. Avoiding conflict doesn't prevent it, it delays it. And while they're staying quiet to avoid tension, disrespect quietly becomes normal. She learns she can cross lines without consequence, not because she's testing him, but because he never shows her where the line is. 3. They give without expecting reciprocity. These men are natural givers. They do things without being asked. They sacrifice their time, energy, and resources because they genuinely want to help, and they don't keep score. Psychologists call this selfless generosity. It's admirable, but in relationships, it creates dangerous patterns. Because when you give endlessly without requiring anything in return, you teach people that taking from you costs nothing. She stops asking and starts assuming. She stops appreciating and starts expecting, not because she's entitled, but because he never established that his generosity has limits. And by the time he realizes he's exhausted, she's already built her life around his endless availability. 4. They mistake tolerance for strength. Men who get walked over often pride themselves on patience. They tolerate disrespect because they think enduring it makes them mature. They stay calm when boundaries are crossed because they believe reacting would make them weak. Psychology shows this is a misunderstanding of emotional strength. Real strength isn't tolerating everything. It's knowing when to stop tolerating. These men confuse endurance with dignity. They think that by absorbing mistreatment without complaint, they're proving their value. But silence in the face of disrespect doesn't communicate strength. It communicates acceptance. And she learns, often without realizing it, that disrespecting him carries no weight. So the behavior continues, not because she doesn't care, but because he never made it clear that it matters. 5. They value being needed more than being respected. Here's the deepest pattern. Men who get walked over often tie their self-worth to being useful. They feel valuable when they're solving her problems, supporting her goals, making her life easier. Psychologists call this external validation. Their sense of worth depends on what they provide, not who they are. So they keep giving, keep helping, keep sacrificing, because being needed feels like being loved. But being needed is not the same as being respected. She may depend on him completely while respecting him very little. And because he's measuring the relationship by how much she needs him, he doesn't notice that she's stopped seeing him as an equal. She sees him as a resource. And he taught her to. Being walked over doesn't mean you're weak or unworthy. In many cases, it means you're empathetic, generous, patient, and giving. Traits that are valuable in the right relationships. But without boundaries, without reciprocity, without self-respect, those same traits become vulnerabilities. And the women who walk over you aren't necessarily bad people. They're simply responding to what you've taught them is acceptable. Respect isn't demanded. It's modeled. And it starts the moment you decide your peace, your boundaries, and your needs matter just as much as hers.